I just wonder if the vice president, who was against this, by all reports, was against the conflict to begin with, maybe he wasn't the right person to bring this conflict to an end. We'll find out.
In my opinion, the vice president of the United States, the chief negotiator on this particular project, has not well served the president.
Wow, they found their fall guy. Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in the East. So begins the blame game. J.D. Vance was made the face of the U.S.-Iran deal. And now that we essentially know a lot of what's in it, I say that because the Memorandum of Understanding still leaves a lot of things less than clear. It is, though, J.D. Vance in the hot seat for how bad the deal truly is and how unpopular it is, even with Trump's own political coalition. Even Donald Trump isn't on the joke, saying earlier this week that he will throw his vice president under the bus if things don't go well.
If it works out, I'm going to take the credit. If it doesn't work out, I'm blaming J.D. You better be careful, J.D.
Trump's only kidding until he isn't. Last night, we learned of another sign of the shortcomings and failures of the Iran deal, the postponing of J.D. Vance's trip to Switzerland. He was supposed to go to Switzerland to meet with Iranian officials. Of that, Axios reports this, quote, the White House said the reason for the change of plans was logistics, but there were some indications that the background for the decision is connected to the shaky ceasefire in Lebanon. No matter what the reason is, it illustrates that this so-called peace deal is not the foreign policy win that anyone in the Trump administration, especially Vance, is suggesting it is. As the vice president attempts to sell a very unpopular agreement with an extremist radical regime, we're also getting a deeper look into his relationship with Donald Trump. That's thanks to reporting in the upcoming book Regime Change by New York Times reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan. They conducted more than 1,000 interviews for their book and presented their findings, those they mentioned, giving them opportunity to comment. Haberman and Swan report that Trump's anger with J.D. Vance over Iran dates back to at least a year, when Vance was not immediately supportive of Trump's idea to bomb Iran. Trump ultimately did bomb Iran's nuclear sites, and J.D. Vance appeared on television to discuss the move. From the book, quote, after watching the vice president on the ABC News program this week, Donald Trump vented to others that J.D. Vance hadn't repeated his own new phrase, that Iran's nuclear program had been, quote, totally obliterated. Trump told one associate, everyone needs to say effing obliterated. That's the word. Everyone just needs to copy what I say. Obliterated, end quote. There's another very revealing anecdote in their new book, quote, during Donald Trump's redecorating spree in the Oval Office, when someone had asked Trump about the near certainty that the next president would remove what he had done, the president had replied without missing a beat, quote, Cubans love gold. Trump quite blatantly saying that his successor would not be his current Vice President, J.D. Vance, but the man who currently serves as his Secretary of State and acting National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio. J.D. Vance's no good, very bad week is where we begin the hour with Democratic Congresswoman Madeleine Dean of Pennsylvania. She serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Also joining us, Princeton University professor and political analyst Eddie Glaude. He's the author of a brand new book, America, USA, How Race Shadows the Nation's Anniversaries. It is out now. Also joining our conversation, Charlie Sykes. He's the author of the newsletter To the Contrary. Congresswoman, I start with you. These stories are sometimes like covering tarantulas in a bowl. There's not really anybody to root for, but it is interesting when they all start attacking each other. What do you make of the position that J.D. Vance is in terms of being blamed by prominent media members of the MAGA coalition for the weakness of the Iran deal?
Good to be with you on this Juneteenth. And I have to tell you, I was just at a Harriet Tubman museum. So I think about the breadth of and the courage of people who came before us. And to your question, I think about the smallness of what we are talking about, the smallness of the people in this White House, the smallness, sadly, of this president, and the smallness of those around him like J.D. Vance. J.D., the vice president of the United States, was against this war. He had very strict convictions before he got into this role as sycophant shill and vice president. And here he is stuck in a terrible, unenviable position. You saw him yesterday spewing lies about the $300 billion and where that was coming from, defending a 14-point MOU that I'm telling you, this is amateur time, writing of this MOU for something so gravely serious. So it's very, very small is what we see about something so very, very large and important to our national security, to our global security, to our relationships with our allies and our foes. He's in a terrible spot, and he should have stood up with a greater spine.
I agree with you on the smallness of the entire Trump story. You know, we were just covering algae blooms. And it's such a, I mean, just to pull back the curtain a little bit, it was such a pleasure to cover the Obama Center opening yesterday.
Wasn't it joyful?
To cover, yes, but it was joyful because it wasn't, they refused to make it about them, right? Like it was all about who we are. It was all about the country. And with Donald Trump, even with the reflecting pool, it's all about what he wants and how it reflects on him. So when it all goes up in green blooms, I guess it's a window into how even the things he purports to care about are badly botched. And with that lens, if you could just talk about what's on the line here, what's at stake in a calamitous resolution to a calamitous war.
Oh, everything is at stake. The world is less safe as a result of this president and how he pursued this reckless war without getting the buy-in of the American people, and of course, constitutionally, not coming to Congress. And what he must do now, though I don't believe he will actually understand it, is he must come to Congress in order to safely remove ourselves from this conflict. I think of the 50,000 service members who are there. My own constituents, one of my own staffers is there in this theater. 13 members are dead. 13 service members are dead. Hundreds are wounded. Thousands in Iran are dead. Thousands in Lebanon are dead. 60 or more in Israel are dead. What was this all for? This is so silly. The memorandum of understanding is a memorandum to reopen the straits. So when we get back to Washington, I know the Senate was in this week, but when we get back next week, the House will be back in. I hope somehow we can reclaim, even with this very feckless Speaker of the House and Republican majority, I hope we can reclaim our constitutional authority around declarations of war and eliminating and reducing the tensions around Iran. We've gained nothing. As you read this document, the MOU, you see that Iran actually wrote this to their benefit. $300 billion with no oversight and no transparency of where those dollars are coming from, going into Iran as we go for a 60-day conversation about a negotiation. Come on. This country is far better than this. Interesting that Mr. Rubio is completely silent and Mr. Vance seems to be stuck in the muck.
Charlie Sykes, Vance is stuck in the muck because Donald Trump put him in the muck on purpose and then went to the microphone and said, if it works out, it was me. If it doesn't, I'm blaming him. So one of the features of this second term is that we're not as reliant on things that happen in private because Trump, I don't know if it's his age or if it's the staffer that puts all the positive press she finds on the internet in front of him, but everything is out loud and public. But J.D. Vance did describe Trump as, quote, America's Hitler and, quote, cultural heroin. J.D. Vance did rise in the podcast space as staunchly anti-war, staunchly against American interventions in the Middle East. And J.D. Vance is now the guy being blamed, I showed you just a couple clips, by Brian Kilmeade and Ben Shapiro for the weakness and fecklessness of the war's resolution.
Well, and J.D. Vance's book rollout hasn't been going that well either, about his conversion to Catholicism, particularly when you have the Pope saying, yeah, J.D., you don't really get this Catholicism thing. But, FDR's vice president, one of his vice presidents, John Nance Garner, once famously described the vice presidency as a bucket of warm spit. Well, I'm not sure that he actually said spit. Well, this is J.D.'s bucket, and you have the feeling that that he is being set up here, that he's been handed this poison chalice. Donald Trump joking that he'll blame J.D. Vance. Well, of course he will. And you know how these Trump jokes turn into policy very, very quickly. You'll notice again when you look at that clip that Marco Rubio does not laugh at that joke. So, I know that there are some people around Vance who are thinking that they're comfortable with this because, now he can be the face of peace in the Mideast. But the more you look at this MOU, this deal, the worse it is. He is being asked to sell the country one of the worst foreign policy crap sandwiches in history. I just don't know how he can deny that there's a $300 billion slush fund, but it's right there in black and white. So the vice presidency always has that weird paradox where you're one heartbeat away from the president, but you are at the president's whim. And I think what we're discovering is, imagine going into this negotiation, knowing that Donald Trump could cut him off at the knees, throw him under the bus, change the words that he should use on a dime. So he is really put in a terrible, terrible position. And to the Congresswoman's point, I think it's incredibly telling that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is nowhere near trying to sell this deal.
So where does this leave us tonight? Strip away the personalities, strip away the finger-pointing, and what you're left with is this: a vice president who spent years building his political identity on opposing endless wars in the Middle East is now the public face of one of the murkiest, least transparent agreements this country has produced in decades: a 14-point memorandum. $300 billion with no clear accounting of where it originates or where it lands. A 60-day window that on paper sounds like diplomacy, but in practice reads more like a stall tactic dressed up as progress. And while the blame game plays out on cable news and in tell-all books, the numbers we heard tonight are the ones that should stop us cold. 50,000 American service members deployed into that theater, 13 of them gone, hundreds wounded, thousands of Iranian lives lost, thousands more in Lebanon, dozens in Israel. Behind every chyron, every soundbite, every joke about throwing someone under the bus, there are families who will never get a phone call back, staffers like the one Congresswoman Dean mentioned, sitting in a war zone while Washington argues over who gets to wear the blame. That's the part that should never get lost in the political theater. This isn't just a story about J.D. Vance's bad week or Trump's old grudges or who laughs at a joke and who doesn't. It's a story about whether the people who sent Americans into harm's way are now scrambling to cover for a deal that even their own coalition can't defend with a straight face. So here's what I keep coming back to. When a president jokes about throwing his own vice president under the bus before the ink is even dry, is that just Trump being Trump? Or is it the clearest signal yet that even the White House knows this deal can't survive serious scrutiny? And when lawmakers admit, on camera, that Iran appears to have written the more favorable terms of its own ceasefire, what does that say about the leverage we walked in with versus the leverage we walked out with? I'd genuinely like to know what you think. Drop a comment. Do you believe this MOU represents a real diplomatic opening, or a 60-day delay tactic dressed up as peace? And should Congress be forced to reassert its constitutional authority over conflicts like this one, the way Congresswoman Dean is calling for? Because at the end of the day, accountability shouldn't depend on which official gets stuck holding the bag in a West Wing power struggle. It should depend on the truth, verified, transparent, and owed to every family who has a name on that casualty list. That's where we leave it tonight. As always, we'll keep digging, keep questioning, and keep bringing you the facts as they unfold, not the spin. If you found this report insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real, fact-based news commentary.